Hey everybody, welcome back to Source the Podcast. Today is a special episode. We're here to talk to Richard and Josh about their recent trip to Ethiopia with a group of clients. And they spent about 10 days on the field. And I'll let them get into, all of the nitty-gritty details. But for context, Royal just opened up a new lab in Addis, Ethiopia, which is the capital of the country. And it's been in operations for maybe about a year and a half now. I don't know if that timeline is quite correct, but it's overled by Haile, who is our main guy on the ground, and then we have two QC coordinators, which is Seganet and Beatty. They oversee logistics and QC and all the good stuff, and they work closely with the U.S. Royal team on evaluation, logistics, and all the good things. But beyond the technical work, in this conversation today, we're going to talk about what surprised both Josh and Richard, what changed for them, and what they carry forward into their work into Royal now that they're back. From the cupping table to the field to the streets of Addis, this is a look at coffee from a wider lens. So if you guys can give a little intro. I said your guys' names, but can you give me, what do you do for Royal? How long have you been working in coffee? All the things.
I guess first time on the podcast. I'll kick it off here. My name is Joshua Wismans. I'm the tasting room manager here at the Crown, one of Royal's satellite facility, where we do a number of things in addition to the cafe. Part of them is all the product development for our high-end line of coffees called the Crown Jewels. And so I, last year, began being directly involved in sourcing the Ethiopian Crown Jewels. So this trip, this being my second year, was I was hoping to strengthen our relationship with Haile and the Ethiopian producers.
Great. Richard Sandlin, been at Royal now for 11 years. I'm a coffee trader here, and this is my first time to Ethiopia, third time to Africa, 10th or 15th time visiting coffee producers around the world. But getting to go to Ethiopia has always been, the goal. Trying to find a way to get to the birthplace of coffee as someone with 20 years experience in the business is something that all of us should try to do. And to get to do it with Josh, led by Haile, with the clients who joined, really was a dream come true. And left with one part inspiration, one part, am I doing enough? One part, how can I do better? And just so happy to get to discuss the conversation with you, Josh, and with you, Isabella, who, of course, recently was in Ethiopia for, albeit a different purpose, but still, I'm sure the inspiration and just the bigger picture questions are floating around your head, too.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think for a coffee professional, Ethiopia really is like the peak, that is the ultimate goal.
I've definitely, I've shared that dream, Richard, for a long time, and continuously had to pinch myself while I was there. Like, whoa, we're here, we're here, and how many folks have you talked to that have the same story of like, was that one Ethiopian, that coffee that tasted like blueberries, that really like made me think, whoa, there's something else going on here. I have that story. Everybody's has some version of it, and it was really, really special. Definitely.
Yeah. What was the context of this trip for both of you? What were your goals, and what did the itinerary look like? Like, where were you guys going, to the field first, to the lab first?
Yeah. So this trip was a culmination of a group of roasters wanting to get closer to their supply chain. And so with roasters that I help navigate this wild world we call green coffee, we looked at visiting producers that they've either been purchasing from for, in some cases, 10, 15 years, in other cases, producers that they're trying to work with. As a coffee trader here at Royal, of course, I can't travel with all of our clients. Only some ever get to join just for logistical reasons, scale reasons, safety reasons, the list goes on and on. But while there, I'm representing the interests not only of Royal Coffee, but particularly of all the clients that I serve particularly. So while, of course, I am there as a Royal Coffee employee representing Royal, being there with my colleague Josh, where we represent Royal together, my distinct purpose first is to learn. How can I learn more about this supply chain that coffees that I've been selling and working with for 15 years? But ultimately, I'm a salesman, right? And so my job is to sell more coffee. And so getting to find opportunities where I can sell more based on what we can buy was so inspiring. Like trying to find the right stories that I want to help grow. And the thing that I'm sure will be a common theme in this conversation is when you think about Ethiopia, and you're like, okay, well, all Yirgacheffe grade 1 is the same. Well, we actually met with 7 or 8 different producer groups that produce a very different kind of Yirgacheffe grade 1, and also represent a very different story, right? Whether it's a single farmer, whether it's producing women empowerment, whether it's focused on education, whether it's focused on experimental processing, or whether it's focused on just producing like 92-point coffees, or if it's focusing on an American expat who wants to focus on their entrepreneurship and their Ethiopian heritage, right? There's so many different stories to share. And when I was there, you're just left with this utter inspiration and these huge existential questions. So the goal, of course, is to find more coffee where I can sell more coffee. Like, it's a very transactional thing. But going to a place like Ethiopia, it is so much deeper and so much richer. And so while the goal, of course, was how can I buy more so I can sell more? I don't know. I mean, Josh, I just came back thinking, like, how can I do more, right? How can I do more for this community and this place that's given me so much? Ethiopia and all those wonderful coffees. How about you?
Absolutely. Part of my role here, obviously, is the managing the tasting room, which serves as an educational space, and getting to be on the ground in those spaces and understanding, like you were saying, Richard, Yirgacheffe can mean so many different things. Is it from a union? Is it a single producer? Is it a private producer? What Yirgacheffe can mean so many different things, and so to be able to learn about the breadth of meaning and how can I best incorporate teaching people about all of these stories that are a part of this, like the total lineage of coffee. We're talking about the birthplace of coffee. All of it kind of leads from there to these moments. And specifically, we were in only one region of Ethiopia. We were down in sort of the Gadea zone, Oromia, and which is a real privilege, and amazing coffees. But there's great history of coffee all over the country, and to be exposed to such depth in just a small place. We were just driving around maybe 3 to 4 hours out and back. You could spend a lifetime there, and Haile has. Big credit to our coworker Haile, who's been working for Royal for 12 years, and it's only in the last year and a half that we got that lab. And he's still out there meeting new people who are coming into the trade, like you were saying, those American expats who return home and building on family legacies in coffee. So it was interesting to be, because here at the Crown, it's a little bit of a vertical integration of where I am both part of the importing company, Royal, where we're sourcing all these coffees, but the Crown as a singular location almost acts like a roaster unto itself. So I was in this interesting position on our trip, which, again, thank you, Richard, for allowing me to come along. For the context, I had proposed to our CEO going and meeting Haile and calibrating with him and the team, and he mentioned that Richard had this trip coming up, and sent an email asking if I could come along, and I'm eternally grateful.
It was great to have you. It was awesome to have you, your expertise, your perspective, and what an incredible full circle. One of the highlights of the trip for me was the full circle moment as we're driving up to the Adido Cooperative, which both you and I have, deep connections through our experience in coffee, and I did one of our clients who joined the trip, and all of us getting to experience that was just so powerful. Maybe you can share like what that meant for you, going to a co-op whose coffee in a previous life you had roasted hundreds, maybe thousands of bags of.
Yeah, absolutely. Adido, the famous YCFCU cooperative, has long been partners with one of our clients, where I was a roaster for about 5 years and roasted a lot of that coffee. Knew that we had undertaken some projects to build some infrastructure at the cooperative, and all of these through different programs, while not controlled by counterculture, but there's fair trade, these programs, there's second payment programs from roasters to producers, and it can all exist in this very abstract way of like, there is extra money going to this place. You kind of hear it, you're like, that sounds nice. But to be there and see the wastewater vetiver that like helps like naturally filter the water post the washing process, all the different infrastructure that was built, it makes everything a lot more real. It makes everything a lot more complex. It makes everything a lot more human. And I think at the core of it, a lot of these trips are about like deconstructing the abstract nature of coffee production. And it's a very physical thing. It's real. There's things to smell. There's people to meet. There's singing. There's joy. There's laughing. And for all of that to be solidified and like made real was really special.
Yeah, just getting to visit different flavors of what flagship specialty coffee is, right? Like I mentioned all those different off-ramps, right? High-end specialty, experimental processing, fair trade, single farmer. Getting to see a successful fair trade cooperative was also a full circle moment for me, having participated in the fair trade movement for a very long time. And while the fair trade system is not perfect, seeing a school built based on fair trade premiums and seeing children in school with school buses to commute, help the kids commute, you have to ask yourself, am I supporting the right things in coffee, or am I supporting the wrong things? And in that moment, it felt like I was supporting the right things.
Yeah.
It's not a matter of, is this perfect? Do I know where every last penny is going? Things are extremely complicated in a global sense and extremely complicated in an international sense. And commerce is more than commerce. And in a world of there's a school built versus there is no school built, I will choose the world in which the school is built every time.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Isabella, I'm sure you felt this in your trip too. I mean, we know as coffee professionals, whether you're at the Crown, whether you're at a roastery, whether you're a coffee trader, Ethiopian coffee fetches some of the highest prices out there, right? It is not uncommon to see $6, $7 green coffee. We sell Crown Jewels of Ethiopia, $10, $12 a pound green. That, of course, at the roaster level could be $24 a 12 ounce, $36 a 12 ounce, right? For the whole bag beans, right? Not speaking to the coffee farmers themselves, but driving through some of the communities, the level of hardship is visceral, right? There's a huge difference in the level of poverty that we drove through on the way to some of these world famous coffees. Not necessarily the coffee producers and the livelihoods that they exist, but the backdrop in which they do exist is visceral, right? There's a difference between a Central American cinder block home with one light bulb and a cell phone compared to a home made out of mud on the side of the road with no more running water and no electricity. And seeing that duality, and then seeing the hope that this school could potentially give, at least for the children of the coffee producers that participate in that cooperative. I mean, you can't leave a trip like that the same that you started, right? You have to walk out and ask yourself, am I supporting the right things or am I supporting the wrong things? And leaving that trip in Ethiopia, it very much felt like I am supporting the right things. I'm not talking about Royal Coffee. I'm not talking about you, Josh, or Isabella. I'm talking about the decisions that each of us make. And it felt like in that moment I was supporting the right things. With both of you two, not necessarily as, as Royal Coffee employees, but just as people who exist in this complicated coffee space, that seeing that duality must have meant something.
Yeah, because Isabella, you were there with Grounds for Health,
Mm-hmm.
and focusing a lot on the work that is happening in those communities.
Yeah. So the context of my trip was to meet the Grounds for Health team, which provides HPV prevention and treatment for women that are involved in coffee growing and coffee production. And we met the team, and there's pretty much just like 3 men that run the main operations, and then they have a massive team of like moving parts of people that they hire in different places to do pop-up clinics and things like that. And what they're doing, the nearest hospital, like when you're getting your vaccines before you come in, they're like, do you need rabies? And please do not pet any dogs, because the closest hospital is either in South Africa or some other place that can treat it. And so the lack of access to healthcare was very apparent to me, and how appreciative of the women that I did meet of, the funds that are being put into it. Because without it, they would have nothing. And obviously HPV causes cervical cancer, which is a very painful and horrific thing to die from. And, they might not know the name cervical cancer, but women will know the symptoms, and they at least know one person that has died from it probably. So that was a big, big discrepancy for me. I think because I'm not in a position of power necessarily of purchasing or selling, it just left me feeling sad to see all the lack of healthcare. But
I think sort of as a larger note on it, I think in no way am I advocating not being critical of how you engage with these issues, the systems that are claiming to be taking on the issues, but also not falling prey to cynicism of if a system isn't perfect, what's the point?
That's right.
And I think being smart about how we engage with these topics, acknowledging the histories and the power dynamics that have created these conditions, but like you were saying, is fair trade perfect? No, but in a world where there's a school or not a school, it those real tangible things that can help people, like they're worth engaging with.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like this starting conversation gives us a good context to like, you know, the experiences that we had there and like how they impacted us personally. I do have some questions for you guys. Like working side by side at Origin, you guys obviously have two very different roles. Josh, I feel like you have a more like, you have a lot more interaction with the consumer. Whereas Richard has a more like a closer relationship with, you know, maybe a producer and then, you know, roasters. And those are two very different lenses on the coffee industry. Was there anything that you like learned from each other while watching each other work on this trip?
Yeah. I mean, I learned a ton from Josh. Just thinking about the possibilities of flavor and how that can spark a conversation. Like one of the best moments of the trip was at one of the joint dinners together where you were talking about all the different foods and the things you were experiencing and thinking about how these spices could inspire you for that next signature drink that you and the team might be working on. And then also at the cupping table when you were thinking, yes, I'm looking for a crown jewel like this, because in the tasting room, people get excited about this kind of flavor profile, and watching your eyes light up from a flavor first standpoint and a culinary standpoint. And one thing that I miss as a coffee trader is, and I not miss in terms of like nostalgic for it, but miss in terms of can be forgetful, is at the end, this is a culinary product. And as a trader, you can get lost in the math and you can get lost in the details and lost in the trade. But at the end, it is a culinary experience, and your gregarious nature and love for flavor was infectious. And I have to remember that Ethiopian coffee is among the most flavorful, right? In a simple way. And it makes people so excited about coffee. And when people get excited about coffee, they want to learn more. And so you sparked a love for and a fondness for flavor that I think I forgot along the way. So thank you.
It is fun to like switch hats of like, all right, I'm importer, you know, working for Royal.
Yeah.
Oh, now here I am at the Crown thinking about them. Thank you, Richard.
Yeah.
And you know, one thing that I learned from Richard is that the traders that are working for Royal, who've been doing it for a bit, yourself included, are working at a much different scale than we are working at the Crown. Whereas I think we, for totals for Ethiopian coffee, last year about 100 bags worth of coffee, which is a third of a container to one of Richard's customers that maybe buys 5 or 6, so
Yeah.
overall smaller. And to understanding that those, and especially we've talked on this trip, like how that power can translate to getting money to people who are doing things that we feel are like helping our industry along. Richard's focused on like how can we get people more money? What things add value? How do we actually bring value to this through certifications? I really appreciated like when we would visit producers, like what are the, like we've talked about some of the complications around certifications, but ultimately they do translate to higher dollar amounts for producers. And your inquiries into these methods, because like, all right, I have people who are willing to pay this for this, and the goal is there's so much connection with I notice how you're focused on. You're really focused on like, how do I take this person, these producers, these farmers, and connect them with people who will compensate them fairly and celebrate their work. And that sort of like connective nature was really inspiring to see.
Yeah. One
So
thing
those
that
observations.
One thing that's very unfortunate in specialty coffee is every coffee has a story, but not every story gets to be valued in the marketplace. It doesn't mean that it doesn't deserve it. It just means that there are competing interests for roasters' attention, for consumers' attention. And anything that we can do as a company to highlight a coffee, whether it's our single farmer program or supporting fair trade cooperatives or supporting a new experimental supernatural process or anaerobic or co-ferment, anything that we can do to elevate and get roasters excited about that coffee can absolutely lead to more dollars translating from here to there. Because the thing to remember, and this is what is inspiring for me and probably similar for both of you, is if we can catch people's attention with the right things, they will value that. Those same fantastic coffees, the attention doesn't get caught. It was still produced in that fabulous manner. But if that coffee can't get sold as a single farmer at that price, maybe it just gets dulled down and rounded down into just a generic lot. And what made that coffee special and fetch that higher price that is doing better work at origin now didn't get the value it deserved. And I feel like that's the responsibility of us as coffee traders, as us as roasters, us as baristas, us as educators in the coffee supply chain. How can we celebrate the work that is being done at origin and multiply that? And that's what I walked away from this trip, just thinking, how can I do more? And that's what's so inspiring about the Crown Jewel program too, because it's, even though it's 100 bags, it's 100 bags of cutting edge coffee broken down 22 pounds at a time, distributed to roasters big and small all around the world. And it's the future of what is possible. And if you look at like our supernatural program that we get from EDN, from I'm forgetting his last name, Michael. We're buying several containers this year. And that is not because of Royal selling it. It's because Michael did the work. We were able to catch it at the right time. And now we're going to see that project, grow. And how fabulous to see something brand new that didn't exist 5 years ago. And we get to help celebrate that and grow it, and more of those dollars coming back. Those are the things that are just so inspiring.
Totally. And one of the things that was a revelation for me, and it was kind of seen in practice, something that I've talked a lot with for our director of coffee here, Chris Kornman, is the want to celebrate and each individual farmer in these systems. It can be so easy to be at a producer's site and ask them, like, well, what about your single farmer lots? What sort of lot separation are you doing? And people understanding that these systems there's a lot of difficulty in facilitating requests from the importers. And so being smart and respectful about where we're asking these producers to take on certain tasks, and understanding that, they've got to be at a place where they can accomplish that. It was interesting to be there and meet all of the producers who are buying from individual farmers, but the farms are very small. There's a lot of smallholder farmers, and that kind of technical infrastructure doesn't exist everywhere. And so it gave me a lot of respect for Haile, who's putting the time and the effort in meeting as many people as he can to find who is doing this kind of work. Because it really does come down to the role of the producer in Ethiopia was I had the light bulb switched on when thinking about all the names that I've encountered throughout my time in coffee, and understanding how that translates to their role in the supply chain. And so we have the Conga coffee, some of the Conga coffees from Conga Trading that a bunch of roasters have really enjoyed. But to meet Takala Mamo, who is the ex-president of YCFCU and who's taken on a lot of single farmer projects from Tuwebech Tio and Huge Shallow, which are two farmers that we got to meet, to understand the complicated nature of bringing these single producer lots to market. And it gave me so much more respect for that process. And also, as somebody representing an importer, checking myself on just being like, well, why can't everybody do this? And there's more to the story, and it gave me a lot of respect for the work that people are doing on the ground.
What was it like having clients along for the trip with you guys and having these interactions and meeting the producers and things like that? Because correct me if I'm wrong, the structure of the trip was that you guys got there and kind of you were in Addis for maybe a second and then immediately went to the field of Hawassa and did a lot of driving for maybe 6 days or so, and then went to Addis where our lab is and met the team there and did a little bit of work there. Is that correct?
That's right. And the thing to keep in mind about Ethiopia is, you land in Addis after a day or two of travel, right? You get through customs and you very much could stop your trip there. You could cup at Royal Coffee's lab, you can meet with coffee exporters everywhere throughout Addis, and you don't need to go farmside. The way Ethiopian coffee works is the coffee is of course grown far away, it gets brought down to Addis where it is milled. So all of the exporters have mills in and around Addis. Once it gets milled, it's ready for export. Ethiopia, of course, is a landlocked country, and so the way that they help control that is they keep it unmilled until it gets to Addis. It gets milled in Addis. When it's ready for export, it then goes out to Djibouti and ships to all the wonderful ports all around the world. You could stop your trip there. For me and for the clients joined, and for, I'm so glad, Josh, you were able to join this trip too, it was imperative that we got to farm visits. And that is a huge undertaking about 2 or 3 days after you land in Addis. Flight to Hawassa, stay in Hawassa, or make your way to Dilla, get to Dilla, and Dilla becomes a base camp. Previously you could drive, everyone recommended against that just due to some safety concerns. So it's a quick flight. You're in Dilla at base camp, and to get to Yirgacheffe, it is a 2 to 4 hour drive each day up a surprisingly straight road. It wasn't windy, but the quality of the roads are horrendous. We suffered 5 flat tires in 5 days, potentially more. We were repairing tires each and every night. One of our clients is a bit of a handyman and loves to get his hands dirty. He immediately started changing the tire, even though we did not ask him to, but that's just the kind of person he is. And getting to go farm level with our clients was imperative, and I know that they loved it. And I think the only answer you can say to that is one part inspiring, but one part humbling, right? Because they are also going through their ideas of what they're paying for, and does it matter, and if they want to do more, and also, potentially their bigger existential questions, right? I'm driving through some deeply impoverished areas to get to some fabulous coffee farms. Why is this? This is not something that a roaster or a coffee importer can solve, right? These are bigger picture questions. But watching their inspiration of thinking, how can I do like $1 per pound give back program? Or how can I support building a computer lab inside of the YCFCU school? Or how can I support a larger donation to Grounds for Health, which I believe we're doing a company match for at the moment, maybe. But watching them, their inspiration just doubles mine. How about you, Josh?
Yeah, I think it broke down the idea that all of our purchasing decisions are qualitative. To see real commitment year over year to producers that our clients have had relationships with, even when quality is down a year. It's an agricultural product. It's subject to a variety of conditions, both political and environmental. To see folks who are participating in our industry in a way that feels more human, really have that light bulb come on for them of like, oh, this is a relationship. We're doing this year over year. We understand some years aren't going to be this coffee. We might not be able to sell it $26 a pound, single origin, but we want to still support the people that we buy coffees from. To see that level of like understanding and like happen was really it was cool to see.
Yeah,
It's cool. Yeah, I feel like I'd be surprised if anyone didn't come to terms with that and like didn't come to that revelation, it'd be a bit of a bummer. But for you guys, what did spending time with Ethiopian partners reveal to you that's hard to grasp from afar? I feel like you guys have already mentioned some great points about this already, but I don't know if you had any more.
Yeah. Do you want to go first, Josh? I've been going first a bunch.
Yeah. I would say the biggest thing is, and I kind of alluded to in my last answer, but understanding the external pressures that affect the coffee industry. Coffee is an agricultural product that exists in both, like, there are politics, there's culture around everything. Yeah. It doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's like an internationally traded commodity, and there is a lot of money in it. And so all of these things can come together to create conditions which make it more than just like, I'm growing coffee, I'm selling coffee. You have complicated political systems. You have what was once like these like economies which had popped up around Yirgacheffe being a bit of a destination. Hearing stories about how producers used to be all over the place down there traveling. Like there are these like little economies that were infused in these systems, and people haven't been able to really visit Ethiopia very much in these last few years. It's become quite dangerous for a number of reasons. And so things have settled down a bit, and obviously having Haile there is a big advantage for us, but it was still like a place where we had to be careful. And I guess that was the biggest thing, is understanding that it's not just a matter of like growing coffee and then processing the coffee and then shipping the coffee. There's so many other difficulties along the way that make getting the coffee to our cups almost a miracle.
Yeah. There's a few that I walked away with. The first is that coffee is inherently Ethiopian. Right? They use the word buna. And when you travel to origin, for every country outside of Ethiopia, there is a growing trend in that coffee producing countries are reclaiming or creating a modern coffee culture, right? Something that would look like third wave here in the United States or Japan or Canada or Australia or Western Europe, right? They are creating cafes and pour over and single origin programs celebrating all the wonderful things that we love in specialty coffee. This is in a lot of ways an adaptation, right? It's a creation. Where in Ethiopia, coffee is Ethiopian. And so you're experiencing it through their lens, through their coffee ceremony, with the pairing of the popcorn and the wheat granola snack, right? And the goat tibs and the injera bread, and having that all be a celebration of their heritage. And the women in the traditional white dress sitting down with the coffee cups elegant. You see these coffee stands every corner of these backcountry roads, and coffee is inherently Ethiopian. And we, of course, have adapted that and created our own thing. But that memory really stuck with me. The other is just how incredibly fortunate Royal Coffee is to have Highland, right? It is very possible that our program could just be Yurgachev grade 1, Sadama grade 2, Guji grade 3, Aromia grade 4, and that be the end of it. But no, thanks to the work of Haile through our other traders here at Royal, Max, Caitlin, Charlie, Peter, Jerry, Chris, myself, Spencer, Lauren, Laurel, Chantel, am I missing it? Amanda, Caitlin. We have helped grow the work that Haile and Max set out to do in developing this incredible portfolio of Ethiopian coffees that, in my opinion, no one can come close to our breadth and our depth and our quality and our quantity of Ethiopian options. And that is directly through the work of Haile and now through the lab and our 2 new QC assistants to continue to develop on that. Our Ethiopian coffees will get better, our breadth will grow, our quantities will increase, all in the service of our clients. And that is through the work that all of us do as traders, as educators, as baristas, as the Crown. All of that is built on the backbone that Haile gives us. And I'm so grateful to get so much time with him and watch a true, master work, right? Wouldn't you agree, Josh? Like watching Haile engage with our producers. While yes, Royal Coffee is the buyer, Haile is their main content. It is watching a master chef or a master violinist at work.
Yeah, a true pro through and through, and like an exceptionally good person. Haile is like an absolute joy. We were laughing the whole time. An incredible host for all of us. But yeah, to see the breadth of Haile's knowledge, how well he maintains all of his connections out there, treats everybody with respect, has a real, just a locked in view of what's going on in Ethiopian coffee in general, is both has vision and is a realist simultaneously. And to learn about, as we've talked about, Haile's been working there for 12 years in Royal's employ. We've only had the lab the last year and a half. And to learn more about how the lab is functioning as not only a center point for all of the producers that we work with throughout Ethiopia to send samples to have this like central location where Haile can work out of, to think that Haile was like putting all together this massive network through just like traveling around and like now for that to all culminate in the lab, I was like, okay, this makes sense, and gave me a ton of respect for him.
Yeah.
And also the lab as like a center point for all of our African operations. This place where we can, like, have a centralized location in East Africa, where we have relationships in Rwanda and Burundi and Kenya.
Yeah.
And to understand Haile's vision for that as well.
Yeah.
True professional.
Yeah.
I was just going to mention, one of the questions I have is what insight did Haile provide on the context of Ethiopia that surprised both of you? Because he is so knowledgeable, he does have so much information. Was there any specific tidbit of information that shocked you or surprised you or?
Yeah. I think we should talk about Ethiopian coffee, right? And so the backbone of the way coffee is traded is coffee producers sell their coffee to mills in cherry, and that cherry price has increased a great deal. A number that kept getting thrown around, maybe it's changed at the time of recording, 160 birr per kilo. At the time of recording, it's about $1 to 150 birr. You don't need to be an FX specialist. That price is going way up. Simultaneously, the value of the birr has decreased while the dollar continues to strengthen. So the question becomes, what will FOB price actually look at? And that's still TBD. And so one of the things that we're not talking about here today is the specific farms and coffees available, because it's still early in the harvest, right? We've contracted but a fraction of what we at the Ethiopia team and us at Royal are looking at. Let's see what happens, right? At the current time of recording, the market seems to be dropping a great deal. That could totally change by the week. How that will affect Ethiopian prices, TBD, we all have to see.
Yeah.
But the coffees that we cupped and the ones that Haile helped showcase were phenomenal. And the past few years, Ethiopian buyers, I think, have been a little disheartened with quality, right? It's been a tough couple of years. Coffee's price has been high. Maybe things aren't as delicious as to be expected. We're expecting a good year. And based on the several tables we cupped, coffees were tasting great. And so that's one thing that, Haile kind of helped paint a picture of. We have to kind of see how this all shakes out. But here are the coffees presented, and the coffees are tasting good. And I think Ethiopian lovers of Ethiopian coffee will be pleasantly surprised in 2026.
Totally agree. Yeah, Haile's really, really great at elucidating just what is the larger picture happening in Ethiopia. Last year, we saw a lot of complications in the larger coffee market with Brazil and tariffs, and Ethiopia being a place where a lot of quantity was purchased to make up for high prices coming from other places. We sourced more Limu coffee than we've ever sourced before, and it became like a really, really solid replacement for some of like the Brazils, for example. With Brazil sort of coming back online, and with Ethiopia having such a big year last year, I think the thinking was that maybe that could be replicated with higher prices. So you have the government setting the cherry price a lot higher than it was last year. But with generally following big harvest years, you have smaller harvest years. So what Haile kind of elucidated to us was coffee from Ethiopia is going to be a bit more expensive. There's probably not going to be as much of it because the producers and the mills aren't buying as much of it because the cherry price is higher. But all of the environmental conditions really came together this year, and quality was going to be really, really nice. So it's going to be a little bit more expensive. There's not going to be as much of it, but the quality is going to be really, really nice. Which is basically all what Richard just said. But
Yeah, I feel like that's good insight from Highlight and good insight into like what, there's so many like factors at play that are affecting production and prices and things like that. Okay, so you guys are in the lab or you guys are in the field. You're spending a lot of time with Highlight, you're getting a lot of insight and information on Ethiopia and, how the government impacts prices and there's so many kind of what you're saying, so many other factors at play, and then you guys get to the lab in Addis, and was it what you expected after hearing was this your first time visiting the lab, Richard? It was. Okay.
And
Yeah.
you had a hand
Yeah.
in bringing the lab together, right?
Yeah. So Max and Peter and Highlight had a crazy idea to build a coffee lab a few years ago. And it was a matter of finding the right space and what the roles would be, with the ultimate goal of helping Royal improve and scale the quality and quantity of our Ethiopian purchases, the work that Max and Highlight and the Ethiopian buying team had already been building on. This allows us to screen a whole lot more samples. It allows us to be more efficient and ultimately get better coffee to roasters at better prices faster. This is in service to our roasters. And as someone who helped design the crown and has an expertise on the technical side of what needs to go into a lab and how to space it and lay it out, Max and Peter asked me to help. And so I played a small part in just ensuring that the lab had everything it needed for the technical aspect of running a QC lab, and one that is comfortable and hospitable to host guests and make them feel welcome and at home. So all the work really goes to those three. I just played, my small part. In terms of how I felt walking in, it was exactly as I expected. It blew any expectations away. It was exactly as I hoped it would be. And as someone who spent a lot of time looking at the 3D models and looking at the plans and coordinating with vendors and improving, workflow, and none of those things, of course, end up being perfect, but you try on paper, and seeing it in person was just such a treat. I really loved it.
Mm.
Yeah. To see the vision come together and how, and I was kind of talking about this before, but thinking about Highlight's job before the lab, and then seeing what having a central location where producers can send samples, having the team there to process the samples, it increases our capacity tenfold to find better quality coffees for better prices for our customers, build longer lasting relationships. As having a chance to go down there and cup with Highlight and get calibrated, to have that team there now calibrated with us in what we're looking for the Crown Jewel program, the possibilities for sourcing specifically these high-end, really like industry-leading coffees from the birthplace of coffee. It's incredibly, I was like, a little bit of like jaw on the floor, a little bit of like, this is it. This is so exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you feel like visiting the farms first impacted you more or in a different way than going to Addis and then the farm?
Yeah, there's an efficiency to an Addis only trip, right? Where you could fly in and you could stay in a glorious capital that looks in many ways like a European city in terms of the main drag, and cup 10 tables in 3 days and fly out. But we weren't looking for an efficiency, right? We were looking for a depth and a breadth and a try to connect deeper with our supply chain. That is the backbone of what makes Royal Coffee unique, right? Our Ethiopian offerings are amongst the many things that separates Royal Coffee. The crown is another thing that separates Royal Coffee. The Otis Lab separates Royal Coffee. The list goes on and on and on. But see, going farm level first prior to cupping, I wouldn't have changed that for a thing. How about you, Josh?
Yeah, I think that getting out there and getting miles on the road, of understanding that once you fly down Hawassa, drive to Dilla, drive out to Guji, see the producers, to really get a sense of the scale of the operation out there, and then to come back and see the lab as this idea of a way to synthesize all of it, made me appreciate the lab so much more.
Yeah.
Versus if I were there and out, I'm sure there would be some appreciation, but it was. I'm glad we did it that way. I really am.
Yeah, me too. And one highlight is we got to meet Badatu Jabichu, which is a coffee producer that Royal Coffee has been, buying from for 10 plus years. Badatu Jabichu is a woman who is 105 years old. She raised 18 children. She has 30 plus grandchildren. We visit her 33-acre organic farm, and it was just an inspiration. We met one of her grandsons, who is a licensed doctor, who is quitting his medical practice in order to continue the legacy that is Badatu Jabichu. And she blessed us. We were able to have a presence with her, and you see her coffee farm, which is gorgeous. And we drive to her home. There's 2 cars, a fence, electricity, Wi-Fi, multiple bedrooms, kids college educated, and it's this is supporting the right thing, right? And this woman who's been selling us coffee for 12 plus years started selling us coffee when she was 93, but it's her name on it. So all around the world, this coffee producer, Badatu Jabichu, through our relationship, has had her coffee on high-end cafes around the world with her name on it. And before that, she was selling to whomever, and that just became Yurgachev. And while Yurgachev, of course, is special, we got to sit with her, and she was so grateful for the reach that we at Royal Coffee have done. And it's this is the right thing. These are the things I want to support. These are the things my roaster clients want to support. How can we do more of this, right? There's only so much Badatu Jabichu's coffee. Maybe this year it's a container and a half. We'll see if we buy it. It's, there's always that song and dance, but that's say 500 bags, but we're selling, thousands and thousands and thousands of bags of Ethiopia. How can we continue to continue that? And I've cupped her coffee and I've tasted her coffee 100 times. It's been a crown jewel many, many years, and it's, if we just would have cupped it, flown in and out of Otis, it just wouldn't be the same, and I will remember that moment. It's one of her last, right? She's 105. I don't know how long, 90 feels old, but 105 is a whole lot older, right? And she was still electric. She was still had this glow to her.
That's so cute.
And just having that opportunity will always sit with me. And her gratefulness for the support roasters have provided her was just infectious. And so, yeah, if you don't go farm level, you miss out on those opportunities.
Yeah. Do you guys have any thoughts about how this trip will shape your approach, the way that you approach Ethiopia moving forward?
I think I need to do more to celebrate the people doing great work and to promote their coffees that are already a part of the process. How can I shift more roasters into supporting the right things? Where when they want to, and not taking the easy route and just saying, here's a great, you're grade 2, which is still special, but how can we find a way to place some of these more story-driven coffees and grow the right things? Not saying that we're buying the wrong things, right? But how can we do more in the extremely positive column? So that I'll take that. I need to do more to help grow the right things.
Yeah, I think the understanding that, and I guess maybe this isn't like a big revelation specific to Ethiopia, but to see the power of partnership and how continued work, when you continue to work with people year over year and understand that every year having a diverse offering and understanding how these coffees can fit into different types of offerings on our list allows us to support different producers and farmers as they grow. And so what might start as like a smaller lot that, is somebody's blender, or is like a blender in a seasonal, but has a lot of potential. These types of projects grow and grow until you're getting, really nice single farmer lots from like these specific producers, where that dedication is locked in and it grows year and year. And we've seen that a lot through the Crown Jewel program, and it's always worth it. To me, it seems like, to continue to develop those partnerships and being flexible with your partners and assisting in that growth. And I'm still like pretty young to Royal. My career in tangentially as it is to purchasing green coffee and sourcing, but it's something I'm going to keep with me as I continue to grow in Royal.
Great answers. That's the last of the questions that I have. I feel like we really got into some really dense, kind of abstract, but also really grounding ideas around your trip, and kind of went through it. Did you guys have any last notes before we log off?
Yeah, you walk away from a trip like that feeling extremely grateful and extremely humbled, and ultimately, you have to ask yourself, if I wasn't here, all this coffee still gets sold, right? So every single bean at some point gets sold and drunk or thrown away, right? So what limited power am I doing as a coffee trader, as a roaster, as a barista, to make it 1% better? And I have my marching orders. I know what I'm going to do. And I would ask anyone listening to this, whether you're a barista, a roaster, a coffee trader, an educator, a coffee connoisseur, a listener, a Royal Coffee employee, whomever, how am I making the supply chain in Ethiopia or wherever I am interacting 1% better? And I think if we all collectively work that way, we can make it a little bit better by supporting the right things. And there'll be more information as these coffees come online in terms of how you can support the right things. It's still early, right? In terms of tangential, support this, join our Grown for Health, matching campaign. And there'll be other ideas too, but how can I support the right things, and keeping that in mind?
Yeah, supporting the right things. What are the right things? I part of our ideas for development stage last year, and this is something I was thinking a lot about on the trip, was how we are an industry, but coffee comes from culture. So how do we get back to a little bit more of thinking of ourselves as coffee culture instead of coffee industry, and like that requires like celebrating the humanity, celebrating the senses, the sights, the smells, the music, understanding stories, relationships. This is a thing that we get to do together. And approaching it as a purely transactional thing is what dehumanizes people. It gets people comfortable with exploitation. It's not how any of us want to continue perpetuating this industry where there is so much life and there's so much vitality. So yeah, celebrating the culture, understanding that it is a thing that we do together, and it's a joy to be able to work in coffee with so many amazing people. It is set against the backdrop of a long history of violence and exploitation, but there is a lot to celebrate as well. And so Richard, when you say like, how do we focus on the good there? Like, those are the things that really come to mind.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank both Josh and Richard for their time today and recapping their trip and giving their insights and their wisdom. And I want to thank the listener for sticking around, for listening to this episode, and we'll catch you in the next one.
Before we go, can you mention the Grounds for Health thing? Because it is happening right now, right?
Yeah, we're going.
Can
Can
you give a quick pitch for it? So roasters can opt in?
Yeah, roasters donate. You can donate through our website to Grounds for Health. Royal is a big contributor every single year, but this year specifically, we will be matching every donation up until $250,000. And if you know anything about currency, this is a lot of money for Ethiopians. It can go very, very far. The operations for Grounds for Health is very systemized, and they have really pared back, and they're very good at spending their money in the right places, and a lot of that goes to vaccinations and treatments, because that's very, very expensive, especially when it's being sent abroad. And I don't know when this campaign is ending, but be sure to go onto our website. We'll link it in the show notes. A really, really important cause.
Yeah,
Great.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you.
Exactly that.
Thank you again, everybody, for tuning in, and thank you to Richard and Josh for taking the time to chat. And